The Ukraine war has been going on for over 3 years now, and there seems to be no end in sight. Neither side has been able to come to terms, but the harsh reality is that it is not looking great for Ukraine. Today, we're diving into why Ukraine's situation is grimmer than many are willing to admit. This isn't propaganda. This isn't clickbait. It's a brutally honest look at the war, where Ukraine stands, what it's facing, and what the world refuses to say out loud. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine stunned the world. From the defense of Kiev to the counteroffensives in Kharkiv and Kherson, it looked like David could actually beat Goliath. But fast forward to today, and the story is very different. Let's start in the east. Chasiv Yar. Just last week, Russian forces captured this critical town. Why does that matter? Because Chasiv Yar sits on elevated terrain, giving Russian artillery and drones a clear line of fire into Ukraine's defensive heartland. From this vantage point, Russia can now target the entire Donbas fortress belt. Cities like Kramatorsk and Kostiantynivka, which have been Ukraine's strongholds for years. These cities aren't just important, they're symbolic. Losing them would mean losing the backbone of Ukraine's eastern defenses. This wasn't just a tactical win, it was a strategic disaster, and one that could reshape the war in the east. Now shift north to Sumy Oblast. A few weeks ago, Russian troops crossed the border and reoccupied parts of this region. More than 50,000 civilians have been evacuated, dozens killed, power outages, drone strikes. Ukraine is now defending on multiple fronts, with thinning manpower and stretched resources. And here's where it gets worse. The morale is cracking. A recent Gallup poll shows only 24% of Ukrainians now support fighting until total victory. In 2022, that number was nearly 70%. The shift isn't just about exhaustion, it's about survival. After 3 years of bombings, displacement, economic turmoil, and daily uncertainty, many Ukrainians are simply worn down. Families are fractured, homes are gone, futures are unclear. Now, most just want the war to end, even if that means compromise. It's not that they've given up on their country, it's that they're desperate for some kind of peace, however imperfect. But even compromise might not be on the table. See, Russia is trying to seize as much land as possible before sitting down at the negotiating table. The more territory it controls, the more leverage it will have when talks eventually happen, especially if those talks are with the United States. Every village, every trench line, every strategic point captured gives Putin a stronger hand. That's why, even as diplomatic discussions heat up, the fighting is only intensifying. Russia isn't just looking for a win on the battlefield, it's positioning for a win at the bargaining table. Recently, Donald Trump reportedly gave Putin a deadline to end the war by this Friday, or face crippling sanctions. Putin, he's playing both sides, hinting at peace while ramping up drone attacks and artillery barrages. He wants land, he wants leverage, and right now, he's getting both. And inside Ukraine, things aren't much better. Another factor weighing on Ukraine's future is the toll on its next generation. Schools have been bombed, universities disrupted, millions of children have had their education paused or permanently derailed. Growing up in the shadow of war, many are experiencing trauma, instability, and uncertainty about what their future even looks like. This generation is supposed to rebuild the country, but right now, they're just trying to survive. Just this summer, mass protests erupted after the government tried to gut anti-corruption agencies. Tens of thousands marched. The message was clear. Ukrainians aren't just exhausted by war. They're angry at their own leadership too. Meanwhile, Zelensky is walking a tightrope. One of Ukraine's growing problems is the brain drain. Since the invasion began, millions of Ukrainians have fled to countries like Poland, Germany, and other EU nations, seeking safety, stability, and opportunity. Many left not only to escape the war, but because their homes, jobs, and futures were wiped out overnight. Millions have fled the country, and many of them aren't coming back. The longer the war drags on, the more Ukraine risks losing not just soldiers, but scientists, doctors, engineers, and young families. Rebuilding a nation is about more than just land. It's about people, and Ukraine is bleeding both. Another challenge, the war economy. Ukraine is spending massive amounts just to stay afloat. Infrastructure is crumbling. Blackouts are common. Entire industries have been disrupted or destroyed. And while foreign aid helps patch some of the holes, it's not enough to rebuild or to sustain this kind of prolonged warfare. He's warning the world not to fall for Russian peace narratives, but without Western support, his options are shrinking fast. Europe stands with him, for now. But US political uncertainty has everyone guessing what happens next. So here's the brutal truth. Russia is advancing on multiple fronts. From the heights of Chasiv Yar in the east to renewed pressure in the north, Moscow is regaining territory it lost over the past 2 years. These aren't small gains. These are strategic footholds that let Russia push deeper into Ukraine's heartland, slowly but relentlessly. Ukraine is running low on troops, ammo, and morale. The war effort is wearing thin. Many of Ukraine's best fighters have been in combat for years now. Supplies are harder to come by. Ammunition is rationed, and the spirit that carried Ukraine through 2022's miraculous defenses is starting to fade. Western support is no longer guaranteed. With shifting leadership in the US and growing fatigue in Europe, Ukraine can't count on the same level of help it once did. Promised aid packages are slower. Political games are creeping into what used to be united resolve. Without that lifeline, Ukraine is left dangerously exposed. And even the Ukrainian people are losing faith. What began as a united fight for survival is slowly turning into a grind of hopelessness. Polls show the public no longer believes in total victory. Protests are breaking out, trust in leadership is slipping, and that might be the most dangerous threat of all, because once the people stop believing, the war is already halfway lost. We're not saying Ukraine has lost, but the momentum is gone, and unless something changes fast, it's not looking great for Ukraine. That said, there are still reasons for Ukraine to hope. Ukraine's will to survive hasn't disappeared. It's just under pressure. Despite everything, Ukrainian forces continue to innovate, using drones, localized counterattacks, and trench defense to slow Russian advances. Civil society is still active, volunteers are still organizing, people are still resisting. Also, Ukraine's air defense systems, though under constant strain, have shown remarkable resilience. In recent months, they've managed to intercept a growing number of Russian drones and missiles, especially around major cities like Kyiv and Odessa. While infrastructure damage remains a constant threat, Ukraine's ability to adapt and protect its skies, even with limited resources, has prevented countless civilian casualties and preserved critical parts of the country's logistics network. And internationally, Ukraine still has allies. While support may be wavering, it hasn't vanished. Arms are still flowing in, training continues, intelligence is still being shared. If Ukraine can hold the line long enough for the political winds to shift again in the West, it may regain not just momentum, but real opportunities. So while the situation is dire, it's not over. And the story of Ukraine has always been one of defiance against the odds. War isn't a movie. There are no guarantees, but truth matters. And right now, the truth is hard to swallow. That's why we told it. If you want more updates like this, raw, researched, and real, hit subscribe.